States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask that we remain standing for a moment of silence for Rosemary Hazel, passed away recently, valued town employee and wife of the former principal of Clinton High School. Thank you. We will call the meeting to order here in this candlelit setting. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here under these conditions. I'd like to start with, this is the February 25th meeting of the Clinton School Committee. Can we start with a motion to approve the bills?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll
Is there
second.
motion being made and seconded? Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Thank you. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of February 11th?
I'll make
So moved.
second.
Thank you. Motion being made and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes from February 11th? There being none, all those in favor? Thank you. Do we have a student rep tonight? He is, yes, and good luck. Good luck to the Gales.
We've had some successes this season that we'll get the full update on in the next one. I know they were working on that, but we want to recognize all those athletes for their team and individual accomplishments.
Great, great, terrific. PTA? Okay. CPAC? Anything from the CTA tonight? Thank you. Any public comment tonight? Thank you. As always, we are happy to revisit it after the meeting or near the conclusion if we need to. So, you're here for our celebrations, and most of you are here for our celebrations, and we're thrilled that you're here. So, we'll start with the Clinton Elementary School.
I don't think that student has arrived yet, so
Okay.
just to give a few extra minutes, we'll start with the middle school.
Mrs. Sargent, Mr. Seed.
And our CHS student is also at the basketball.
Okay.
We will recognize her at either the next meeting or we'll wait till the next celebrations.
A worthy place to be.
So the Clinton Middle School tonight is here to congratulate Larissa Ilha, and she's an 8th grade student who has been one of the first members of Project Lead the Way, and from what I hear, has been a tremendous help where she is continuing into the second term with Project Lead the Way and assisting Mrs. DeSessa. And with that, she was also a big part of the Lego Suite, being the only 8th grader on the team, and she definitely mentored the younger students. She had a lot of patience, and she did an outstanding job. And observations that we have made with her in the classrooms, Larissa speaks dual language, and she is the first person without being asked to assist any and all students when she sees that they're struggling. She just has this sense, and she makes her way over there, and she's the first one there to help however she can. And we just brought in a new teacher in technology, and the new teacher said that she's been such a great help down in the technology area, kind of showing her around, helping her get organized. We're just so very proud. There's so many things that we could say about Larissa, and you would never know it because if she was walking down the hall, she's very quiet and to herself. Would you agree, Larissa?
Yes.
Yes, and I want to thank the 8th grade teachers, but more importantly, Mrs. DeSessa, for being a big part of recommending Larissa. So we want to recommend her to you and congratulate her.
Outstanding.
You stand in front of us. 1, 2, 3. And then you can just shake your face.
Congratulations. I'm just going to come over here so you
Oh, yes.
Congratulations. Thanks for being great.
Yeah. funny tonight,
It's okay.
sorry. And then I think actually you're gonna stay, we're gonna do the,
Yes.
employee of the month.
So it's our privilege from the Clinton Middle School and such an honor to recommend Mrs. Mendoza for Employee of the Month. Mr. Seed and I have been talking, I think, for the last hour and a half, just of all the things that she does for the Clinton Middle School. But she's the face of the middle school. When you come into the building, she greets you, she's the first one there. There's no job that she will say no to. She's a big help for us when we have new students coming into the building that do not speak English, and she takes the time to sit, greet them, and work with the families to get them registered and feeling really comfortable about their first day at school, getting them situated with riding the bus, assisting with fundraisers that we do at Clinton Middle School, and being part of the PBIS team and organizing things for us. We have a big day coming up this Friday, Dr. Seuss Read Across America Day, that she has offered to assist us with, and we're just so happy and honored to have her as our administrative assistant and the first person that you greet at the Clinton Middle School. So congratulations, and we're just very honored.
All right, I believe our elementary student has arrived.
All right.
So I want to introduce everybody to Aloha De Souza. Aloha is in 4th grade in the Clinton Elementary School, and she's a product of our ESL population. She came to the United States from a small farming community in Brazil when she was in grade 1 and spoke no English whatsoever. She is now here, and I happen to have an opportunity to interview Aloha earlier today, asking her what her greatest achievement here is and what her best class is. She loves mathematics, is one of her best classes. And I looked at her MCAS scores, and she's already passed both of her MCAS as of 3rd grade. So that talks about the dedication of her family. I want to say thank you to it. I want to say that she works extremely hard. She's been a light in the school. We really enjoy having her. She's full of energy. Her best teacher, she tells us at this time, is Mrs. Plum. She had Mrs. Plum in grade 1, was introduced to her, and then she had her again in grade 3. So Mrs. Plum's had her twice, and she was nominated by Mr. Ogilvy. Mr. Ogilvy was doing a graduate class and had an opportunity to interview Aloha. And from that interview, I was so amazed and happy that we decided that she would be our nominee for Student of the Month. We want to say thank you very much for everybody here, congratulate her on all of her hard work and everything she does, and thank her family and everybody else in all the schools. So that is your time. Oh, you're not shy, come on, I know that.
Thank you for helping Mr. Ogilvy pass his graduate.
Oh, did she? I'm sorry. There's too many kids. Sit down.
So as always, each month, clearly the very best part of our meetings. With the exception, of course, tonight, we actually have a presentation with some architects, and we're looking forward to that. That said, if you were here for the Employee and Student of the Month presentations, we won't be offended if you choose to take some pictures and get home to some power.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Or stay here and enjoy heat, whatever you want.
Yes, yep, you're welcome to stay, but we're not offended if you choose not to. All
So,
right.
yep, so
Yeah.
as you mentioned, we have a presentation tonight. As you know, we've been having the feasibility study being done on the old fire station. And so we're joined tonight by DRA Architects. We also have Mr. Duffy's here with, as well, who's been a large part of the driving force of this project and helping to secure the grant to get this project going. And I think, so they came prepared for not having full power, so they brought some old school slides for us.
Thank you for accommodating us tonight.
Is that good enough view for everybody?
Can you see that, Mr. Morrison?
So we'll turn it over to you guys.
Well, thanks. We all set with this? Can't see. I'll take that as a yes. Good evening.
Paul, do they need should they hold a mic or anything, or that going to be too much?
You want to give them?
Just give him that one.
Does it work for you or not? No?
Just try talking. See what we
Test,
pick up on.
test, test.
Just try without the mic.
Try without the
We're
mics.
pick up.
Great.
You know what?
All right, yep, let's go. We'll get going now.
Good evening. My name's Jim Barrett. I'm principal with Drummer Zane Anderson. We've had the pleasure of working here in Clinton for the last several months, taking a look at the existing firehouse facility as a possible proposed STEM center. Along with me this evening, Greg Smalley, our project manager, John Tyndall Gibson, our ed to have a chance to share some of the information with you this evening. I see Mr. Duffy here. I don't know, Phil, any introductory words along the way here?
I want to reacquaint the committee and the audience with the gist of this project. We've been working under a grant from the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development to retain DRA and also the Mass High, the North Central Mass Workforce Investment Board to see whether the idea of implementing community resource, a STEM center, whose principal use would be, as a community resources principal user would be the Clinton Public Schools, check the viability of that relative to program and the condition of the building specifically. And DRA is here to make a presentation on program, building, and budget.
Thanks, Phil. Phil was kind enough to give me a heads up this afternoon, letting me know that possibly no power, so we've reverted to the boards. Hopefully they'll be large enough for you to view, but if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me along the way. This first slide, speaks to the location of the STEM Center, just off of Main Street here in Church. This is the existing firehouse facility. Directly adjacent, as you know, the elementary school, just down the roadway here to the high school and the middle school, but directly across the street, adult learning. Major manufacturers within town, Micro, and other potential partners within the community were some of the ideas explored as thinking about the facility and the potential users for it. fire station, Church Street across the top here, Main Street down the side. As I mentioned, the existing Clinton Elementary School facility adjacent, fire station off to the side of it. About a 3-minute drive to the high school and middle school site here from that location in town. So as we looked at the existing facility, some key issues that came into play. First, dealing with a beautiful historic structure, really an icon here within the community. Thinking about it as repurposed use. How do we take this facility that served the community so well for so many years as a fire station, thinking about it as some other form of use within the community? And then lastly, STEM education. How well can it be integrated into this type of space? Given that we've had some open-based spacing, Greg will touch on it later as we share some photos. It's wonderful space, and we feel certainly easily adapted to this type of use. So this was the overall project schedule that we identified. Pretty short hit, September through the end of the year to meet the guidelines. And in this, not wanting to go line by line, I'm certain at your distance, unable to read it, but it's basically significant steps that I wanted to identify. The first step, project initiation. The second step, information collection and evaluation. The third step, concept development. And then lastly, the fourth step, opinion of probable cost, developing cost estimations for the work through that time frame. And so with that, I'll take it to that first step, project initiation. Let our project manager, Greg Smalley, touch base a bit on some of the work within that.
Thank you.
Good evening, as Jim said, I'm Greg Smalley. I was project manager on the project. Take a quick walk through the building. I don't know if you've been through it. I've had the privilege to meander through. Lower level, nice solid foundation, good slab, relatively low ceiling height, but still usable for some storage. Access to it a little bit limited, and the lighting and whatnot still in need of a full rebuild, but good bones, nice solid building that seems to be standing up quite well on its own. The street level, getting up closer to the 11.5, 12, 13-foot ceiling heights. The ceilings and all the trim still remain incredibly intact for a building of this era. Good bays, nice clear opening front to back. Good load capacity. Obviously, we were parking fire trucks in there before. We can get a STEM program in there, and it has a nice feel to it in terms of the wholeness of the project, the wholeness of the building still, even with the change from horse-drawn to mechanized engines. When they took down the stalls at the back, you can see the change from the white brick to the red brick is where the use inside the building changed. It still maintained its integrity as a design. We thought it was quite attractive to work with overall. The second floor, for some reason, we took more pictures out of the windows just because of the views and the connection back to the community. The second floor, once again, the layout of it is quite usable for it. We think that most of it can be cleared out and turned into larger spaces to replicate the lower level, which we'll show you in some of the proof of concept. But the connection to the outside, the ability to let people know what's happening inside the building and have that connection to the community as a whole, we thought was quite special. And then finally, the real fun part, the upper level, accessed via one of the best staircases ever built that wasn't called a ladder. And, but quite a neat space when all is said and done. It's a truss system that's hanging the second floor through those truss rods. And pieces over here, the two large parts and pieces of lumber on the floor are where we took out the demising wall for the structure on the first floor to increase that bay for the apparatus. So the structural engineers have been through the building, think it's quite sound and pretty easy to work with to do what we want to do with it. In effect, we're reducing the loading on all the floors by going to a STEM center away from a fire department. That said, it has need for full mechanical systems, electrical, plumbing, the whole 9 yards. It's left essentially as a fairly good shell the way it is. So we went from same time trying to bring along the concept of what STEM learning is. It's been prevalent pretty much since the baby boom. It's come along as project-based learning, STEM learning, started to get a little bit more formalized in the 70s, and it's been going through all the way through to today. So 1972 to 2018, the players have stayed the same, but the games they're playing and what they're playing with have changed quite a bit. It's still a very appealing way for students to connect with their teachers and to connect with one another. We're seeing a lot more in STEM learning in small group, 10 to 12 people working on a project, similar to your first program here with the computer pieces and the robotics, tying them together, a lot of different programs with kids with different interests. We think that's one of the real key pieces to a successful STEM project, is to engage at every level of the interest of the child. And here, once again, STEM learning doesn't stay just at the elementary or high school level. It's coming all the way across into community college and up into adult learning. The idea behind this program was or this effort here with Clinton was to program for every age group that might come into effect or might come in to use the building. And John will talk a little bit about that programming effort as we went forward. So we finished up the informational collecting at about the same time we were setting into programming and starting to understand how the building might work and who might be influential in that. And I'll have John come up and talk a bit about that now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. So it really is a beautiful, beautiful building. I talked to the fire chief, and he said it broke their hearts to have to give that building up. When we do a project for you, we want to listen to what it is you need, and we want to make sure we understand that very clearly. So to do that, first of all, I'm just going to share with you a very concise statement that was in the press about this project. It said that this space would be a public-private collaboration and would serve as a venue for project-based learning for youth, readiness and skills training for local community, and a space that will foster creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurial skills. The town would work together with the school district, which owns the building, and other community stakeholders to create a sustainable organizational model of a makerspace if that project proves suitable. So our mission then is to see if this building will work for that intended use. We talked to quite a number of people about town. We started with a planning committee meeting. And at the meeting, there were a couple of school board members, there were a couple of officials from town. Superintendent was there, Mr. Duffy was there, a number of other people. And we talked about what the thinking had been to date, the history of the evolution of the idea at that point. And it was decided at that meeting that we should do a public forum. We actually like to do that, and we did 3. We did them all on Veterans Day, one at 7 in the morning, one at noon, and one at 6 o'clock in the evening. And there were a number of people, a nice representation of private citizens as well as people from different organizations that came to that. And we took notes. We talked to them about the ideas. We had a number of slides and photos that we showed them, and we listened very carefully to what their needs are and what they thought it should be. And what we'd like to do is show you some maker spaces or some STEM centers that we are familiar with so that you can just get an idea of what is being done currently in maker spaces and in schools around the region. This is Foreman School. It's a private school in Connecticut, and you see this is what they call their Ingenuity Lab. And there are quite a variety of things going on in there. This is their teacher. These are a couple of students who were working there the day that we went through. One was working on fishing lures. Is that related to some curriculum that they were involved in? Here's a dollhouse that somebody was working on. Quite a number of things. It's a very simple space. As you can see, it's a hard floor. You can see the table is adjustable height. It has wheels. So there's a lot of flexibility. Same space. You can see a 3D printer, laser cutter. Those are common pieces of equipment that you find in a STEM center or makerspace. Here's another area in that same Ingenuity Lab where you can see they're outfitted for robotics and doing that there, which is nothing new here in Clinton. This is Miss Porter's school. It's another private school. This STEM space is actually divided into two spaces. So there's like a dirty space, sawdust or machine dust or whatever, and then a clean space with computers for designing and planning and doing research and that sort of thing. This is a community meeting that we had. You might recognize this is your library here. And this was sponsored by Mass Hire. And we had some private companies represented there, as well as NIPRO and Mass Health and so on. This is Blackstone Valley. They're doing something similar. It's called an education hub. Theirs is a little bit more probably career and voc-ed oriented than Makerspace. We went there and had a look at that. And these are some design elements that you would find in a STEM lab or Makerspace. The furniture usually is very light, agile furniture that can be moved around so that the spaces can be organized in different ways. Typical equipment, as we discussed, lathes, cutters, 3D printers, and so on. So then as we think about all of this equipment and the different kinds of things that people want to have happen in a STEM center, we have to think about how all that is going to be organized and how the spaces will work in the building that you have. And Greg's going to talk about some design concepts.
Thanks, John. So we get through all of our thinking and talking and end up with that little bubble diagram there that John is taking off. And that's a way for us to communicate both internally and with your group as to what pieces need to fit next to one another, how they relate relative to size. And we start to turn that into some partie drawings here. So this is the actual firehouse partie drawings, lower level, predominantly for storage. The yellow is circulation on each one of the floors. The blue gives us the makerspace, fab space, whatever we might want to call it. Gray, the darker gray is outdoor space, and then some collaboration space, office space, support space. What we like about the building is its flexibility, the fact that it's not a column and girder type of building, but rather hung with the steel trusses gives us a little, or the wood and steel trusses gives us quite a bit of flexibility on those intervening floors. So we then went ahead and developed 4 different options, trying to figure out how best to maximize the program versus the dollars that might need to be invested into the space that we have. The first 3 all anticipate an addition to the building. The last one is working just inside the building itself. For ease of presenting, we did the ground floor for each one, and the lower floor, second floor, third floor are off to the left, so we can look through those in a little bit more detail. In our first option, it was this idea of a covered connection over to the elementary school and toilets outside of the building off to the right if you're looking at it from the front. That gave us the majority of the floor space inside, about 2,800 square feet on the ground floor. That would be open for use. We do by code need 2 stairs, and we need an elevator in order to access the second floor. Stay on the ground floor, and you're just about code compliant, pretty close to being able to use just the ground floor. So that will give you 1,800 square feet with no other connection and no real way to expand. The trick with these type of buildings is really to be thinking about what your ultimate build out might be. So if ultimately you want to use the upper floors, plan for the elevator, plan for the steps, plan for the egress. Those are all the pieces that drive the floor plan. Then size equipment to take care of the extra floors in case you then bring them online. You're not back fitting equipment backwards into the building. So our first stab at that was a relatively simple connection over to the elementary school to expand the learning opportunities. Option 2 took an addition out the back side of the building and covered the connection to the elementary school. That moved toilets and stairs inside the addition and gave us room to expand further back. This starts to impact the chiller for the elementary school. So we have some residual costs that need to be considered as we go forward. And these floor plans are essentially interchangeable. What you do on each floor isn't impacted by structure. So if you like this first floor with the second floor of another option, you can put those two together and your only real driver is circulation. And finally, a third floor, slightly bigger, toilets, kitchen, lobby. This is looking at a more community-centric type of build-out, covered connection over to the elementary school, and still a little bit more room for a future addition, but it brings us up to a bit more building space right from the first start. And then option 4 was typically the default. What happens if we stay completely inside the building? So in this case, the area is a little bit smaller. We need 2 toilets only on each floor. So we get 2 toilets, stair in the back, stair in the front corner, elevator in the back. It brought us from about 2,800 square feet of floor space that we can work with to about 2,200, 2,300. So we lost about 500 square feet between the two because of the toilets, bathrooms, and stairs. And on that floor, we get all of the wide open space that we had before and the ability to expand out in the future, but you avoid the need to change out the chiller for the elementary school and any of the connections to the elementary school is off on that option.
The next piece that we'd like to talk to you about is opinion of probable cost, which is the fourth step in this. The fourth step in that series of steps within the process. What we were able to do once we went through the first few steps of the process, we're able to collect enough information that we could share it with a cost estimator, the construction cost estimator, able to help us identify opinion of probable cost for the 4 options that were identified. What this basically touches on is the idea that the costs as they're assembled represent total project costs. So really what the overall comparative number is, it's an order of magnitude cost that allows you to look at scheme to scheme an order of magnitude cost of comparative value. Construction costs are identified, equipment costs are identified, project development costs are identified, other miscellaneous costs are made part of that, and then ultimately a total project cost number. I believe these were within the booklets that you had received. That is the description of the breakdown, which is within each of them. And what we've done is provide a kind of a side-by-side comparison of the 4 options. So option 1, as Greg had described, basically with Center Street out here, Church here, the addition off to the side of the building, so some presence to that street. Existing building at about 12,700 total square feet. The proposed addition at about 4,100, 16,800 total square feet. It does have the covered connector to the elementary school, as was touched on by Greg. In terms of construction cost number, it was at about $6 million, total project cost number at about 8.2. Option 2 and option 3 each move to the back of the building. In terms of the breakdowns, they're about, option 2 is about equivalent with option 1 in terms of overall sizing. Construction cost number at 6.2 million, total project cost at 8.3 million. Option 3, as I said, similar to option 2, a bit more construction to the back. 7 million as a construction number, 9.4 as a total project cost number. Option 4, which, as Greg described, looking to contain within the existing walls of the facility This option was not described in the booklets as they were offered. But what it looks at is the existing square feet of 12,700 square feet with no new construction added to the facility. Also, no connector to the existing elementary school. With that, construction cost number at about $4.6 million, total project at $6 million. As we said, what these represent is, for study purposes, test fit information for each of the 4 alternatives. One thing we'd like to emphasize is that as you look at these, although they look like architectural floor plan, they're really meant to serve as a test fit. There's really not a significant design effort in it other than to be able to say that amount of space, which would make sense in terms of support of the program, can fit within this area. It does give us the opportunity to share that information with the cost estimator, and they're able to help us develop these types of cost estimates. At this juncture, certainly these numbers are very fluid. We haven't delved in deep to be able to hone them to any significant degree, work with the cost estimator to look at other options and alternatives for cost savings, etc. But this information gives us at least a point of departure in terms of what each of the options contain and what order of magnitudes are available for cost centers. So with that, that's the total package of information that we wanted to bring to you this evening. Happy to entertain any questions. Greg, John, and I can answer questions around ideas of how the various plans were formulated, educational planning and programming questions through John, or any others that you may have this evening.
Well, I want to start by saying thank you very much for this thorough presentation, incorporating a lot of the aspects that we've been talking about and sort of bringing them to one particular, several visions of what it could be. And so we'll open it to the committee for any questions you may have.
I have a question on option 4. So is the second staircase now within the existing structure in option 4?
Yes.
Okay.
The elements that are needed to support an idea of multiple, the various floors, once we get to this use group,
Yeah.
we will need 2 stairs. We will need an elevator, the vertical pin,
Yeah.
and we will need additional toilet core space. Each of those are held across the back wall within the footprint of the building.
Gotcha.
It yields slightly smaller spaces, yet they seem adequate for the activities that are anticipated at each floor level.
Okay. Could the second stairwell be a fire escape?
No.
That's just against the...
The code will require an enclosed stair tower.
Gotcha. Okay.
Other questions?
I get a million, but I figured...
Yeah,
some-
go ahead.
Somebody
Go ahead.
else.
I figured you had a lot of questions, so I'm not gonna ask it.
No, I mean, so when, because we had 3 options, and I appreciate you guys putting together an option 4, because I know, I'm just speaking for myself, but just a little bit of sticker shock from the original, the
Yep.
prices, but understand. So I had a couple other questions regarding I noticed there was a big difference in the number, the way the restrooms were laid out and like the amount of like stalls and everything between the options. There was a lot of variety. Is that just like you guys presenting different options, or is there any, like, what's the requirement for, what's the minimum requirement for restrooms for a location like that?
The minimal requirements are those expressed, option 4, option 1 show kind of the lesser amounts.
Mm-hmm.
In option 3 is probably the one where we have the greatest amount of square footage dedicated to that type of support space.
Right.
Much of that speaks to the possibility of the types of uses that may come to the building. Multiple user groups, after hours use, adult use, so on and so forth. So that was some of the thinking, as that
Sure.
was put together. As Greg touched on, The elementary school has a chiller directly behind the building. And really, some of what option 2 was exploring was how close to it can we get without trying to disrupt it, although I don't think it was successful in the test. So ultimately, it comes into consideration in each of these. But that was part of the reason for trying to skinny down as much as possible the elements within option 2.
In option 2, that's the one where there was consideration for like a chiller for the elementary school? Was
In
it the
option 2 within the booklet,
Yeah.
there were option 2A, B, C, and
Correct.
D. There were 4 total. And what we have identified here for the side-by-side comparison, in each option, in options 1, 2, and 3, we did have the connection to the elementary school. So there's consistency across the board as you compared them side by side by side. As it speaks to the issue of the HVAC equipment, we did not include the additional elementary school HVAC equipment requirements in option 2 or 3, so that again, these 3 could be considered apples to apples.
Right.
Okay.
Option 4 is the outlier in that it simply says, how do we minimize as much as possible, so it stays within the constraints of the existing footprint. It does handle the HVAC requirements for that building,
Right.
but it does not have the connector element as the other 3 did.
So the HVAC for the elementary school only came into play if the connector was involved?
In options 2 and 3, as we build to the back of the building,
Okay.
that's where the HVAC equipment at the elementary school came into play.
Okay, because that was the only thing I was struggling with was because I understood the connector, but I wasn't quite seeing like why, if we weren't connected to the elementary school, what was the purpose of having like it was discussing HVACs for the elementary school, and
In options 2 and 3, because we're building to the back of the existing building,
okay,
That's where they're located right now.
that is where they are located. So
Okay.
that's why there was
so we
those
just
cost centers in the various
replace them with,
Yeah, replace them with newer
Something
ones.
new,
And
okay.
they're, you know,
So
and
that-
you'd be replacing, whatever they are now, 18-year-old
okay, thank you,
systems.
that makes sense now, I couldn't wrap my head around that.
And I'll pass this down the table. This is the existing fire station facility. Shaded here, you'll see it's a rectangular bar across the
Okay.
back. That is the HVAC chiller that's on the ground that does
Understood.
serve the existing elementary school.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Pass that down so you can see it.
Right, so we're just saying if we were gonna have to build in there, we might as well
If we're gonna build in the back, we're gonna have to rip that out.
rip that out and put a
Yeah.
new one in. Do you guys need to see it?
So, in your experience with these kinds of projects, and I think I understand through both the book and your presentation tonight that the options that you've laid out allow for the STEM STEAM Center to continue to build out, or in this case up, correct? And that the construction costs are really about getting the building ready to be what we want it to be as that vision continues to evolve as a community center, as a you know, the dirty lab that you mentioned, the clean lab, the design lab, that kind of thing. But in terms of the total project cost, that would be pretty fluid depending on the direction that we decided to go.
Yes, but as Greg touched on, when we're speaking about the new stair tower, the elevator core, or the HVAC equipment that serves this building,
Right.
or the electrical service that serves this building, it makes a lot of sense to bring it in at capacity that could serve all 4 floors. Similarly, the elevator, they would bring it in so it has access to all 4 floors and key it off if in fact the upper floor wasn't used.
Right.
Yeah.
So the prudent thing to do in a project such as this is to absorb those costs regardless of where you may end up going, because it's
Our
cheaper to do it right
experience,
now.
it becomes significantly more expensive to say putting in 3 stops of an elevator with the idea
Right.
that you're going to attempt to add it in the future.
So Mr. Bates and Mr. Barrett, the town has had experience in doing that in the very recent past. We did the senior center, about $2 million 5 years ago. We put in a 4-stop elevator, used the basement as storage, and to provide for the entries to the 3rd floor, which hasn't happened yet. The mechanical systems were not brought completely up to the 4th floor, for instance. We brought a panel up to the 4th floor so that loans would be much less than conjecture. But that infrastructure put in place to anticipate future development at a time when it was least expensive to install at least the rudimentary basic structure.
That's a great point. You know, kind of sifting through the various decision points of how much do we put in, the running of the major kind of cabling to it, the setting of a main panel might be the limit that you decide is necessary to get to a place where it's left for future development as you think about the 3rd floor. But certainly that investment right now makes a lot of sense in terms of the effort that would be underway in bringing the building back online.
Other questions?
I had a question. I thought option 2, that
I thought it was, the base construction price was 5.7 million.
Yes.
And-
So what I used for purposes of option 2 was actually the 2A
Gotcha.
that's
Okay.
in your booklet. The reason why I did not use the first was that it did not carry the connector to the existing elementary school, and that's a choice that
Right.
could be made. But to keep it an apples-to-apples comparison to what was offered in option 1, we felt that showing option 2 was the way to fairly compare it, and that was similarly done in 3.
Sure.
We carried 3A as the basis of these numbers.
Right, because before option 4, I think option 2, the base option 2 was the
Yes.
cheapest.
Yes.
And it was slightly smaller square footage, but yeah, but seeing option 4 now, you know, having everything inside obviously takes a lot off of the price, not having to put that addition onto the side of the building.
But also
what works
losing.
well with option 4 is the ability to add in the future as the program continues to grow and finds new ways to sustain itself. The programming, as we did it, came up to between 4,500 and 5,000 square feet of floor space for the program itself. Option 4 gives you just about that on those 2 floors, of open space, not with bathrooms or anything else. So that would give you what we had pretty much determined would be the minimal amount to meet the program as identified through our work and get you up and running is option 4. And then to expand, you can go via option 1 out with a street presence, but not to the elementary school, or 2 or 3 out behind it. But you have the ability to think about that in the future, get the program working. It might be that you need smaller incubator space. The STEM world may evolve a little bit to space that isn't necessarily anticipated here, that option 4 gives you the ability to build to.
Other questions?
So I say, at this point, could you explain what normally the next kind of phases would be that you would typically see in a project moving forward?
I'm going to take a half step, and then I'm going to let Jim talk about the next step. What I propose we do is put option 4 in the final report, so that you're not surmising what option 4 might be. So
Sure.
we can
Yep.
do that since we haven't printed final report for you yet. Put that in, send that back up, and then with Phil's, you still have a few comments for me. And any other comments that might come out of this, we'll incorporate those, put option 4 in. Then I think that brings us to the point where we are tonight. terms of what's in print and what's in words.
And I do in my backpack, and I'll bring them out so you all can have them, in a similar format that was shared in the booklet for this format. I have a single page for option 4 that I can share with the table for your record. In terms of next steps, this is a conclusion of a study process, one where the key elements are observation of existing conditions. Does it have the bones to be able to carry the program that's being asked for? In our analysis of the building, we certainly feel that this structure can manage it. Our structural engineer has identified that the building certainly can manage what's being asked of it as it moves forward. As Greg touched on earlier, the structure of the building is one which it's open bay space. It was needed to be that when apparatus was within the bays. Now it's just wonderful open space that doesn't have the encumbrances of columns or any other type of structural wall within the opening of the building. So it's very adaptable and very usable for this type of very flexible space. So that was another consideration. Another component that we strove to make part of the study was understanding a program statement, exactly how much of what types of spaces might be necessary to support the envisioned programs. And as we think of these programs, we come to it with a full understanding of this type of space has to be extraordinarily flexible, because what's happening today may be very different in a year from now or 18 months from now, certainly. One of the real wonderful pieces about this building is when we think about flexible space, our educational planners and programmers tell us all the time, flexibility comes with storage. The lower level of this building, which has lower head heights, and it's not really great for accommodation of occupied space, although it could be occupiable space, would be wonderful storage area. And with the inclusion of an elevator that goes throughout all 4 floors, makes it very accessible, so that movement of materials up into spaces when it's needed, and then being able to get it out of the way so others can come in and use the very same space, is another advantage of this type of facility. So those were some of the elements of the study as we brought it forward. The opinion of probable cost, always an important component, and we will continue to refine that as we move forward. Next steps would be thinking about if one of these options or another idea comes forward in terms of that being a direction to move in. At that time, it would be good to be able to then have a subset study that looks at just that option and begins to ask the questions more specifically. What are the actual program elements being brought to it? What are the cost centers for the various fit-outs necessary in a more specific way? An opportunity to look at the option from the standpoint of thinking about opportunities for developing cost centers where you might have a variety, low, medium, high level ranges, where you start thinking about, well, we can move in on day 1 with this, setup or this assumptions, with the idea that we can grow into other levels. So it's all that work that would be typically seen as a next step. Focus on one of the, in this case we have 4, but there may be others that people may be conjuring up as we think about this collectively. Land on a particular direction, be able to dig in a little bit further to understand more specifically cost centers, issues around programming and planning, construction issues that might, elevate. And with that, then be in a very good position to be able to say we know with much more certainty what the cost center is for this investment and what the deliverable will be to the community.
Joe, I just have a couple more. At any point in this process, will we get definitive numbers on what the load capacity is? Because I know the architect report, and you guys both kind of mentioned that just visually it looks like for what we're asking out of the location, it should be able to support anything, but at any point does work get done that says definitively like your max capacity for this floor and that floor is X?
The only piece that held us back from defining that for the upper floor was we didn't want to destroy any of the walls.
Gotcha.
That's where the tension rods are.
Okay.
Once we can see those, then we can know what the tension rods are holding for the second floor and if those intermediate walls are actually helping to support the third floor. So you would be part of this next step would be a little bit of destructive investigation.
All right, and the only last one I had, and this might be me not understanding, being the best with like electrical circuits and stuff, but in the electrical systems, it said 800 amp, 208, 120 volts, and do we need, and Paul, this might be a question for you, for some of the equipment that we're thinking in there, does that meet the needs that? Okay, because I was just thinking, I didn't see anything for like 240, and I just. That'll carry 240. I know. I see 208, 120, and
40, 41.
Yeah. Mr. Mom.
And we're off to the races. Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my only question, and that's just me not totally understanding how like the electrical, how they're rated and stuff like that. So I just didn't see 240 anywhere, and I just figured some of the equipment would probably run that, but.
It may be that 240 is not provided at the street.
Okay.
So that's talking about service in, not what you would do with the transformers or rectifying inside. But how we came to that load, just so we know, is we took all the building loads that were calculated to run the largest of the buildings. Then we took all of the loads that would be on the highest level of equipment that was suggested by the sub-consultant.
Okay.
Put those together, gave them to the electrical engineers to get us into the right range.
Okay.
So, and it may be the 208's out in the street, so 208 is what's at now. Then you can go up or down with the transformer to make it all work.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, and to everybody in the audience, our apologies for the shifting, but we do have this electronically. We'd be happy to share it as a PowerPoint presentation at some time in the future if that's helpful. Certainly easier to read when projected at a much larger sizing. But thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. It's exciting. Dr. Meyer.
All right. So first, I guess, I know that was, obviously we saw a new option tonight in that presentation than we have before. So I think, we still got to think about, as we get the final report and start thinking about, as a committee, what the next steps we want to take moving forward. And I think we can talk to Phil as well about sort of some of his perspective on what we have going. Let's say at some point, one of our next steps would be probably to talk as a committee, looking at all four options.
Sure.
And also maybe talking to you.
Sure. If I can just wrap up on the presentation.
Please.
What we just witnessed today is an excellent demonstration of effectively a proof of concept. Basically, they were asked to test the building against the program. And the returns are that the building is adequate to the proposed use. The next questions are, as we move forward, are, leaving aside cost for just a second. There's the question of the value of this model of instruction and learning, potential value it has for the students of the public schools, and whether you as a committee and we as a district, we should embrace that and understand what kind of investments would need to be made to provide for that, either here or in some other venue. There are some advantages to this venue, particularly if we contemplate it as a community resource. In terms of proof of concept, that said, there's still a world to be done in terms of understanding how each of those schematic designs would affect the operation of the facility, particularly with regards to students and the general public at large. For instance, where you come into the building makes a big difference in how you control circulation through the building. If we talk about segregating second floor plan, they are kind of mix and match over the first floor plan, but really, how those work is to make it different. In the next phase, you look at, well, if we put the floor here on the outside, we have 2 big rooms. If we put it inside, we have either 2 smaller rooms or 1 big room. Does that work for us? So we do these different things. There's also a question of phasing, as we use the building, and contemplating an additional. I think once we do it, we'll probably be doing it for the foreseeable future. So I guess I would ask you guys to as we consider moving forward, to contemplate, again, this idea as it's proposed to be more meaningful part of the experience for our students. And see if we can identify resolve to move forward, identify the right cost and the right project, and prepare it for the next stage.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right, we're going to move on. So, the first agenda item under the superintendent's report is a retirement letter. So I received this letter. It's dated February 25th. We received it earlier. Dear Dr. Meyer, it is with bittersweet feelings I write to you to announce my retirement from the Clinton Public Schools. After almost 40 years and many exciting positions stretching from New York City Public Schools to Clinton Public Schools, I have decided that it's time for me to retire. My retirement will take effect at the end of the year. I want you to know how much I have enjoyed working with the students, families, and staff at the Clinton Public Schools. It's truly been a home for me for the last 8 years. I hope I've made a difference in the lives of the people of the town of Clinton as much as they've made a difference in my life, and I know I will never forget the friends and families I met here. My best to you and the staff and faculty of the district for a long and successful future. God bless you all. Sincerely, Kathy Buchanan. Just like the last one of those I read, there's not really a way to follow those up. But
I'm off of a journey. That's what we did the last
yeah, that's
time.
what we did last time.
Thank you, Ms. Buchanan, for everything, your commitment to the district and to the learners especially, and your advocacy for them. It does not go unnoticed, the support and the structure that you've made for all learners in the Clinton Public Schools, and we thank you for that.
Okay. Community outreach was sorry, should be community engagement. Was the strategic plan area we were looking at, the goal. So a couple things I just put on there. We do have a Title I meeting and district report cards. We sent those out. I know I had some difficulty with my links on those. It took a couple of tries, but we got them.
They got out there.
So we had so we distributed the district report cards. I did not give you have a copy of the letter here that shows you kind of where these are available, a copy of the letters. I did not print out the report cards for you because the new report cards are very interactive almost. You click on it and it kind of opens up, and then you can see things, and you can click on another thing to see how it compares to the state or those types of things. So they did encourage the electronic distribution of them this year. So we did send them out via email to all the families. We are also holding a Title I meeting, I believe it was in the letter from March 13th, so that we can look at things like our parent compact and our Title I programming and those types of things moving forward. And if you go to the in the community engagement section, one of the actions was, continue expanding community partnerships within the school district and developing the Title I parent involvement policy and school parent compact at each site. So we're kind of trying to start addressing that goal with that meeting on the 13th. The very first action was the welcoming environment, creating the district environment committee. So that committee has been formed. We have had one meeting so far. It was in January. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, So Wednesday will be the 27th, will be our next meeting. I think we really got some good information. I think, you know, I tried to prepare sort of a draft survey for that meeting, and I really focused, I think, a lot on communication, and there were a lot of perspectives that other people brought to the table about other aspects of making a welcoming environment that I almost didn't even really consider when I put together the survey. So we've been sharing some thoughts on email, and we'll try to come up with the next draft of the survey hopefully on Wednesday, and hopefully be able to get that out soon. And then I'm hoping that, just like we've been working on the athletic survey, and if we get the district environment, welcoming environment survey, then we can try to, you know, kind of market those together as a you know, trying to engage the community and gather that feedback. So as far as, I mean, those are probably the two major ones that I have as far as updates in the community engagement one. The only other one I'd say, like, provide opportunities and experiences to promote student civic engagement. Obviously, they did change there was a new law passed where we do have to do more of the civics and increase all those. So we're working on that right now looking at within our history curriculum. We'll make sure we're providing those experiences is to do it in the 8th grade and in high school.
It goes into effect for next school year, the law that was passed?
Yeah, I think it's either this school year or next school year, but I know we'll perfect it by next school year. But I mean, some of it you can kind of say, like, are you meeting the bare minimum of the law by doing the mock, if the 8th graders are doing mock town meeting, does that cover the bare minimum of the law? Probably. But we're going to look to really kind of, you know, meet the spirit of the law. That should be things we're working on for next year. So that's pretty much, you know, the main update on that, unless anyone has any other major questions or concerns. I just put in here Mass Partnerships for Diversity in Education. There was a training that I went to last week. It was not much of a training, more of a conference on just looking at how we can develop a more diverse educational workforce. And when you really look at, you know, in Massachusetts, that if you look at the diversity of the student body and you look at the diversity of the educators, they don't really match, right? So looking at how we can try to, you know, promote people going into the education field, and how we can try to attract, you know, educators of color to kind of come to your system. They mentioned, the commissioner was there, spoke about, you know, really some of the research that shows that if you can just have, if students see at least one, if they have access with at least one teacher that they can identify with, you know, as their race or their national origin, they're going to be much more successful in school, having that sort of that role model. So I think that's something that we want to try to work on, or, you know, keep in mind, is that we want to make sure that we're providing those role models to meet the needs of all of our students. And then that being said, the last thing I kind of have here is the principal search. I did put some thoughts down here. So there's a kind of a quick timeline. We did post the job on February, I think it was actually February 14th, the end. You know, I did put a job description. It was a fairly lengthy one that was kind of tweaked from a fellow district to be kind of comprehensive. I think I did put on there that it was basically a working draft subject to final approval. So I mean, we can always tailor it if we wanted to, but most people who are going to be applying for a principal job are going to be aware of what the job entails. So I did want to get that posted right away. I figured once we knew, giving that extra week over February vacation so that applicants could apply. Screening committee, I've started to look at, you know, some thoughts on who might that screening committee be comprised of. You know, we tried to make sure that we've covered most of the key stakeholders there. So if there's anyone that you see in that list that you feel is not represented that should be, you know, feel free to reach out. And obviously we did look at including one school committee member on the screening committee. So I think we're still going to need to, at some point in the near future, identify probably one member of the committee to be on the human resource committee at least, and one search committee, and one to be on the principal screening committee. So the process, obviously, has been posted. We did include a required question with the posting, so all applicants have to give basically their vision statement for Clinton High School as part of the application process. We'll get the screening committee up and running on the 18th, starting with the confidentiality agreement, walking through sort of a process on how to, rank candidates and look at criteria, working on drafting questions and coming up with the preliminary interview dates. The committee can send the rankings to the chair can compile them, they'll meet again to select candidates to interview, sort of some date ranges there to try to get some first interviews done. And then, so the goal will be hopefully to offer the position to someone by April 30th on this timeline. Obviously, it does give us a little bit of a window. If for some reason the process is dragged out, we're not scrambling. But we do need to remember, particularly if we're getting someone, if someone were going to come who is maybe currently in contract in another school district or anything, we're going to need some time for someone to look at breaking a contract. So, so we have that going on. So that's kind of the timeline. We did enclose the principal position posting. You can even see in there, which says, Clinton Public Schools welcomes applications from a broad range of diverse candidates and strives to recruit and retain staff members that reflect the diversity of our student population. That was a statement that they recommend putting on, right at that diversity gathering I went at. They basically said, people look for those statements to see if it's a, a setting that they want to be part of. So we made sure we added that into there. And like I said, a lot of the responsibilities and things are things that have come from other existing principal job descriptions, and I just tried to kind of tweak them and tailor them for our needs. So I think that's sort of the update on the principal process. The posting has been up. I would say that there are applicants at this point, so and I won't get too much into that. So I think unless there's any other questions on that, that pretty much wraps up my report.
So I guess I would ask the board members to let me know if you have an interest in serving on the screening committee for this position or the screening committee for the HR position. Because we need to have at least a representative. We need to have a representative for each of those positions. Yep. That's correct. Okay.
And I think there's I'll confirm with Mike, there's possibility there could be two for the HR position, because I think it was two for facilities, but we'd want to at least identify. So if you're interested and you want to let,
okay.
If they let you know, and then we can form it out. But because we got a little bit of, neither one closes till March 15th. So.
Great. Okay. Great. Any questions on either the posting, the process, or I guess anything? That's for Dr. Meyer. Nope. All right. Do we have any reports from our advisory committees?
Quick turnaround since the last meeting with the vacation. I don't think we had an opportunity to meet.
Yeah. No?
No, I don't have anything from the
Okay. Do we have anything under old business?
The only thing under old business, we did mention talking about potentially looking at start times for the meetings. We might add that as an agenda item, but if that was something that the committee wanted to do moving
Sure.
forward, we could, I think we could discuss that here under old business.
Would any of you like to put that on the table? Does 7 o'clock serve our purposes? Would we like to move it up?
I'm fine if we move it to 6:30, but I really don't care enough to make a motion about it.
You would support one, but you're not going to instigate it.
I'm not spearheading this initiative.
Is there any reason? Is there any reason to, I guess, not consider moving it up? I mean, I 7 o'clock. We have our community celebrations. I don't think we keep parents or kids here necessarily too late. I don't know that whether 7 works, or we'd be better served trying to move it up and then have that much more time if we need to go later. I don't know the history of the committee well enough to know if it's been 7 o'clock since time began, and I don't know if that's a good enough reason to keep it that way.
Are all the other town meetings 7 o'clock? Are the selectmen at 7?
not all board meetings are 7.
No.
So, doesn't sound like there's much interest in.
I don't care one way or another.
Yeah, somebody brought it up sometime, I don't know.
I think we were all here early last meeting, and it seemed like a great idea, because we all were sitting there going, boy, why are we just waiting until 7 o'clock?
I do think that there's merit in considering it, but if there isn't enough energy and, we certainly don't want to mess with the programming because our viewing public, we don't want to lose the viewership that we have, certainly.
I do think though for, when we have special events that take place before school committee meeting, that maybe we start saying for our meetings to take place immediately after.
Right, immediately following. So like if we post tri-council at 5:30, we'll say school committee to immediately following, yeah. So we don't have that lull.
Okay, all right, well,
Just a couple of things. Hey, Steve, we mentioned that the last meeting, at least I had, about doing a walkthrough, kind of a mid-year walkthrough. Okay, I honestly, right after we talked about that, the weather turned lousy, and then school break, and now it's lousy again, so I'll just email you, and mine was the ground, so,
Yeah.
if there's a time when, I don't care if you want to go or Russ wants to go, just when, and we just kind of play it by ear with the weather, I'm available pretty much whenever.
Yep.
So, right after we talked about everything, I covered in snow.
Yeah.
So, and, did you, I know we talked about the next negotiations. Anything on that, or just a meeting?
No, I know that, so there was a meeting that took place over the break. It had been we were supposed to have a meeting on Friday before break. That got postponed again by the attorneys. So it was a meeting over break that I was unable to attend. But it does sound like it was a meeting with the town attorney, my board, I believe Russ was at the meeting, and the attorney from the union, the AFSCME attorney. So it does seem to be my understanding that they were amicable to moving forward with kind of the new bargaining unit as we have been talking about, because it would still be within the same unit. It would just be the same union, just one a different bargaining unit. So that's my understanding where we are right now. I haven't got a lot more details. I haven't been able to, I haven't connected with Mike yet since I've been back, but we'll keep you posted, because I'm gonna have to reply to them too, so we're gonna need to start. Yeah, like we said, regardless of what happens with the facilities custodial portion of that union, there's still the secretarial portion of that union that we still need to negotiate a successor agreement.
Thanks.
Anything else under old business?
Yeah, real quick, Joel, I just want to follow up to to the presentation that we heard earlier today. I think we need to focus on like the amount of money that would just make the building like usable for anything. So I mean, obviously we want to use it for STEM, but like, so looking at option 4, which is the cheapest one, that the base cost, what does it cost to make that building functional? Because either way, if we decide to move forward, like we're gonna make a decision, even by not deciding to move forward, like what we're kind of saying is, if we don't have the appetite to try to get the money to make the building useful, then we're kind of saying that we don't want to do anything with it. And then that brings us down another path. Now we look at, are we gonna sell it? What are we gonna do with it? So we don't have to have a vote or anything, but I think at some point we just have to kind of gauge the committee's appetite for this investment. And I think we also need to start pulling the town into this. I know they're aware of it, but like, and availability is of these guys, if the one presentation is all that's in the cost, but if they can't do it, then I think like somebody from the school committee should go to a selectman and a FinCom meeting, present this to them, and hopefully at that point maybe we have an idea of what we want to do, because I don't think something like this magnitude of an investment is going to get done unless the school committee, the selectmen, and the finance committee are all on board in one direction. And the other reason it's good to have those other boards involved is, we don't know what I know the middle school Russ is looking at, he's making updates to it, but there's a chance that we may be looking to, depending on Russ's opinion, and if we qualify for that program that we tried last year, they do a feasibility study, like they may recommend that we have a new middle school. So before we move forward with an investment of $4 or $5 million, whatever, to make that building functional, it'd be good to know that the selectmen and the finance committee are kind of on board with that big picture, if they're on board with the investment for the fire station, and they're also on board with the possibility that we may be asking for money for the middle school. Because the last thing I want to do is push for the money for the fire station, and then possibly, you know, kind of expend our political capital then when we have to ask for money for the middle school. So I just think it's, you know, important that we, at some point in the near future, come to a decision on what we think. Are we going to pursue? Are we going to make that building usable or not? And bring those other boards, bring the selectmen and the finance committee into the discussion, because if we are going to move forward, we need their buy-in on both that building and to make sure that they're still with us if we need to eventually ask for the money for a new middle school.
I think it
Dr.
makes-
Meyer, Mr. Duffy, do either of you have thoughts on that aspect of the proposal?
No, I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. I think what he's saying is great in the sense that, you know, you have a couple of different things you're looking into, right? So that building exists, like the fire station exists, and right now it's not really useful, right? So at some point we need to make a decision of, are we going to make that building useful, or get rid of the building, I guess, you know, one way or the other. So we need to make, that's one decision we need to make, but we can't just make that in isolation, because, you know, yeah, it would be nice to have this cool STEM center, it'd be nice to be able to do these other things, but that, you know, it's like, you know, buying a luxury item and overlooking your necessities if we do that at the expense of being able to make sure that we're either maintaining, renovating, or building a new middle school down the road. So I do think it makes sense kind of how you're talking about, I mean, almost kind of plotting it out, saying, you know, if we were going to get, you know, this type of money for this project in, you know, FY20, realize that if we get invited in the MSBA program in FY21, we're going to be looking for this money for a feasibility study, which then could mean this money in FY23 for a project. Yeah, this one. So, but at least having that all on the table, right? Because like you said, I think the point is, we don't want to get to the point where, especially if you get invited into an MSBA program and they're going to give you a 70% reimbursement, that the town is saying, you know, what do you need that? We just gave you $6 million, you know. So, so I think just being upfront about that, and I think that's where it comes down to, you know, the whole idea is really trying to look at this is how can we make this more of a community center as well, and trying to look at that aspect of the programming. It just needs to be understood that that's really the goal, and it's not really addressing because you could take that $6 million and we could sink that in, you know, Russ could spend $6 million in the middle school in 3 months and do it, you know, for the roof and this and that, whatever. So, and that would honestly be, from a day-to-day basis, a much higher priority. You can ask Mr. Sessa. And the ceiling tiles and whatever else you see. So, so there's a lot of things that we need to address in that building as well. And even, you know, and even as Russ was mentioning, like, even if we were going to look into the MSBA program, that's going to be 5 years out. There's immediate needs in that building with, like, replacing a roof that we're going to need to address anyway. So, so it's kind of a balance.
Yep.
In short, I agree. This will be not only expensive resources, but political capital. I think it's all, personally, I think it's all doable. I think it's all desirable. But I think everyone needs to be communicating and clear and be in favor of the proposition. I mean, again, we have to understand what is the value proposition to the school district introducing this kind of model of education. You guys are more experienced just say, hey, we're thinking about this idea, we're working on it. We've not had any serious meaningful conversations with any of the other potential partners, collaborators. Yet. But again, we understand what the sense and sentiment of the school committee is, and we can begin to have those conversations. But really, you guys, it is a vision that the students will be the principals of this. Not the soul, but the principals.
And I think that, you know, it's an opportunity, it's a good problem to have in the sense that there's, you know, a forward-thinking plan to look at an innovative approach to an existing space that we have, but to spur innovation in learning. And but I would agree with everything that's been said that you know, we can dream, but we can't bring the dream to any kind of reality without understanding what level of support that we would have. So perhaps, you know, we can figure out how to get on the docket for you know, reaching out to those boards as well and let them know what we're thinking about, whether that's part of our, you know,
Budget presentations, or it's a separate meeting.
Yeah. and you know, I guess we'll leave that to you to.
Yeah, I think as
work
we
with my
start,
board.
you know, as we're kind of starting to really enter budget season now, I can, you know, we can talk to the, you know, I can try to talk to the FinCom and Mike and everyone, just kind of get a sense of when and how they might like that presented, because I know they're, you know, like I said, I know we're going to have a point where we're going to have to share our, you know, what we'll be invited to a FinCom meeting to share
Right.
our budget. Is that the time to do it? You know, can we look at something like that?
And I guess one other thing I would say is that, you know, our role is, you know, one of advocacy for supporting the vision that the administrative team has in terms of the resources available to the school district. So, you know, I think if the board would have more questions about, you know, what that could look like in practice, you know, from a day-to-day school type of thing, I think that's a little more gray for us. I don't want to speak for everyone, but just, you know, where would the STEM Center, STEAM Center supplement?
Yeah.
If not supplant, some of the work that's done. What does it give us from an educational standpoint
And understanding some of the other almost, you know, operational logistics in terms of, okay, I have middle school kids, I want to get down there, and yeah, it's a 3-minute drive, but I've got to drive them, you know, and so, you know, are there ways that maybe we could do something like that? Like, are there ways that a midday pre-K bus that's finishing its run can pick up a class of middle schoolers and bring them down there? I don't, you know, like, those are things that we could look at, but we just have to, you know, they're valid concerns, and I think that, not concerns, valid questions, that I think that we would need to explore, and we can inform and talk about more.
I would only recommend that we don't do this presentation to them as part of the budget, that we try to, if possible, give it its own separate, like, date with it, because, you know, there's, you know, 100 line items that we're presenting to FinCom. I just don't want it to get buried. I think if it's possible, if we could meet, just go to a selectmen meeting or a FinCom meeting and just kind of solely focus on this for 15 or 20 minutes at the meeting, just to kind of gauge their interest level and answer some questions. I think it would be better to do it like that.
I mean, it would almost be great to have like a joint meeting, that almost maybe the facility, you know, the whole topic is just capital planning for the town, and just sort of where we are, you know, and what might be the big projects on the, you know, you know, we had those in other districts I've been in. We've had, you know, all boards meetings where it's you know, the FinCom, the selectmen, the school committee all in one joint meeting, and that way we all just kind of, you know, can share those things and everyone hears it once.
I think that would be helpful. Okay, anything else under old business? Anything under new business? Mr. Morrison, I understand we have a blood drive on the 8th? It's before, I think it's before our next, the 9th?
No, it'll be Friday the 8th, I think.
Okay, so it's before our next school committee meeting.
Yes.
And typically, the student
I'm early, get a Game
rep
of
would.
Thrones t-shirt. March 8th.
Okay, so March 8th, clear your calendars and give blood, and let's continue to push Clinton High School forward in the blood drives. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So make that motion.
All those in favor? Thank you. We stand adjourned. I have no gavel tonight.